Dave Simpson with Interpraxis. I was particularly interested in one, the use of working with partnerships, both in the Winnipeg example and the Sudbury, and I think even you probably did that in Nova Scotia as well. And to the point where you've identified priorities through those consultations, and now they've been out of a large consultation process. To what extent do you now move into the collaborative governance element, where those partners that have said, yeah, we want to be with you, and please continue to consult with us, have a stake in the game? And maybe if Sudbury, you could also address that within the cabinet. It's particularly interested in terms of, what teeth do they have at that level, and how credible and accountable are they to their own stakeholders within those different groups as well?
Yeah. That's the big next challenge, and I guess it's the direction that the municipality wants to go, by slow degrees, to borrow from the last quote. I guess thankfully, maybe not all of the stakeholders that we've been involved with have the capacity to engage in that, or are the relationship isn't strong enough yet to allow that to happen, but there certainly have been some instances. The one that comes to mind in our case was food security. We actually, some community groups approached the city and asked if we would hold a roundtable meeting around food security, and one of the outcomes of this was the formation of a sort of policy working group that seems to be interested in formalizing itself and sort of buddying up with the city on a number of joint priorities. But only time will tell how much appetite there is to go that route of collaborative governance in every sector, or take up every opportunity like that.
Okay, I'll try to answer your question. The cabinet, as I think I had mentioned, only meets 4 times a year. So if you were to ask the question, what keeps them into it, I would say recognizing and appreciating their time commitment, because these are all institutional leaders. It was really important for us to get those people to buy into the concept, because we're trying to institute change in their organizations. And unless we feel that those institutional leaders are at the table, nothing's going to happen. Because we can bring in champions from different levels, and our experience has been not. So that's the first lesson for us there, was to have those particular people at the table and appreciating their time of only 4 times a year. How do we keep them interested? It's small things along the way. We have an annual event every year where we have huge community engagement. So we try to give them a stake in that by actually small things like giving out an award or being the MC or things like that that are small, but they're appreciative of their influence, but not timing on them, taxing on them. The other thing, the small thing that we've learned this year, is this marketing stuff that we were showing you here. We're paying for that at the city for those institutional leaders. So for them, that's big, because they wouldn't do something like that. It's outside the norm, but it actually helps them achieve their objectives. So it's freebies, something like that. And in terms of allowing them to get their institutions to be on board, is that we've gotten them to commit staff to committee level work. So while they're only meeting 4 times a year, we have other committees that are meeting monthly, and they've delegated to staff within their own organizations, whether that be researchers, communications and public relations people, or actually coordinating people. So we've got cross-representation on that next level down of committees. So they're all functioning very, very well. From the city's perspective, Cindy here is the coordinator at the city. So she's actually the individual who holds them accountable to make sure that they show up for meetings, that they're given their information that they require, support materials, and keeps those coordinating committees running smoothly and being productive, because otherwise we can't keep them at the table. Because when they go back to report to their cabinet leader in the institution, if they're not being productive at this level, then they won't be at the table again. So it's really about appreciating where people are coming from and giving them some sense of ownership. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Most of the most interesting collaborative things you see happening are at the community level. When you're working at the provincial level, it's an entire different environment. We do, like I said, there's an expo roundtable it's quite large and quite lively, and they do have a lot of input on some of the, they're very focused on some of the outcomes. But to tell you, to be honest, up till now, interest in measures, there was a couple little bit of interest, but nothing, not like, we felt like we really needed to produce a product that would start to stimulate some talk, basically, and then hopefully people will start to get involved.
This is a question for Catherine from Sudbury. I wonder whether you've seen evidence of, or whether within the city you have a fear that residents would see the marketing as greenwashing. I wonder whether there's, I'm sure you've been, that engineers have been working to clean the city for years, and you showed us that. But I wonder whether within the residents, whether there's fear that it isn't yet clean, and therefore this marketing, might be seen the wrong way.
To answer that question, then, I believe that is taken care of because the work is ongoing. We've just done an intensive soil study in Sudbury in cooperation with the government and the health unit and the corporate companies. So that is well publicized. So we're not trying to say that we're all done. We're just saying that it's a work in progress. And I think that everybody recognizes that we still have issues because they're well communicated at City Council, with whether it's algae in the lakes or in certain lakes, etc. So it's really, I don't think that there's a fear that we're washing it away. We're just basically trying to encourage good behaviors towards proper change. And mind you, this marketing campaign's not out yet, so we could end up with a big article in the Sudbury Star telling us that we're way off base here. So we're hoping we're not, and we hope we have enough momentum around us to celebrate that. So.
I do have one in my pocket, too, that I'll maybe offload here if we have some time.
Well, actually, a lot. I do. I've got to say, the Sudbury presentation is fantastic because I was there when it was a moonscape, and I didn't live there, but and it's amazing what can be done, and that the environment has to be so devastated until action has to be taken. But it certainly did, and you've gone way beyond that in terms of developing a more stable economy and social structure and social capital. But my question is more directly to the presentation for Nova Scotia. Again, it's a capital model, and my question is always, if you want to bring it all together, how do you bring together? It's hard to put them all in the common units of measurement, and I think you're quite familiar with that. Like, it's hard to put financial capital in dollar terms. You can do that for sure. Non-financial, what you call build capital, that you can put in monetary terms. But natural capital, you can do that too, but it's a little more difficult. Human capital and social capital, there again, how do you bring the whole kind of total capital model together? So that's my one question here.
The committee did agree early on that we weren't going to try and monetize everything. It was going to be just presented more as qualitative indicators for each capital. Does that make sense? Even though it's set in the yeah. Well, it's basically when you use a set of domains, you can pick indicators. They don't necessarily have to all add up. But
well, we're going to hear more from you, Hans, later on the Canadian Index of Wellbeing and your efforts to bring it all together or not. We decided to keep, maybe for an unknown period of time, to keep the 5 capitals and the output indicators, good old GDP, to keep them as they are, keep their integrity, develop each one, let people get familiar with them, what they each mean in their own right, and then see if there's a way to index them. We don't want to pretend there is. It's a big enough step for people to understand that we're talking about assets here, or capitals, rather than just outputs. That's a big change. I think in general for the whole population. So we decided not to merge them together. We're going to keep them separate for the time being. Does that sound about? Yeah. And as Catherine said, that means there'll be some monetized indicators and some non. So there we have it. That's our step.